On today's episode of New Forum and in the context of the Identity Hackathon, we're honored to have the thought leader with a crystal ball, David Phelps, co-founder of Jokerace, the master of organized chaos, Reka, co-founder of Guild, as well as the native internet builder, LDF / Let's Dance Forever, spearheading the girl economy and key member of Boysclub, among other things. So they have other titles and credentials, but we'll start with this. So the conversation will focus on the present and future of identity and reputation, as well as what keeps them excited in the space. So Reka, David, and LDF, let's start if you're ready.
Let's do it.
All right, perfect.
I love it. First of all, I always love when someone else gives an introduction because I get to learn more about myself every time because I hate introducing myself. So 10 out of 10, you did a great job. But yeah, super excited. These are all our favorite topics and some of my favorite people.
Awesome. All right, so obviously I started by saying identity, reputation, and to a certain extent, community. These are really powerful words, but not necessarily easy to define. So I wanted to start the conversation with each of your take when you think of identity, reputation, or community, either Web 2 or Web 3, like what are you excited about, or what is your own definition? Doesn't have to be necessarily technical, it can be. So how do you view it? Each one, there's no good or bad answer. Maybe we can start with LDF and then David and Reka.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Or not.
No, this is great. They're big topics. We don't have enough time, so I'll keep it brief. But I think in the context of this conversation, one of the things that I'm most excited about is just developing this shared sense of identity and community through kind of the things that we do together. So for example, like, as I mentioned, David and Reka are like some of, my like favorite people in this ecosystem who I have met through doing things rather than maybe like owning a shared asset or living in the same place. And so continuing to develop my own sense of identity through the things that I like doing and the people I like doing it with, and bringing that both from like the physical space into the digital one, regardless of which web it's on, is the thing that I want to see more of and I'm excited about.
I can go next. I think something that describes what I'm very excited about in terms of the reputations and identity that we can build towards. Spotify recently launched a feature that they recommend you live events nearby based on who you listen to. And not only this, but let's imagine that LDF does not use Spotify. She only uses Apple Music, and David only uses a different, like maybe he only listens through YouTube. And so the data would not converge between these platforms otherwise. And it would be so much cooler if it not only recommends me to go there, but I could also see that my friends are also listening to these artists, but on different platforms. And I could advise or like make a group chat and help us get together and go to a concert together and have these shared experiences. So essentially having shared experiences through shared interest across platforms.
I like the social graph aspect. I really think about it as like a co-created self. It's like yourself, not just as you see yourself, but as other people see you. That is your identity or reputation. And so then the question is, well, who are you going to allow yourself to co-create yourself with, right? Like, who are the communities that you trust to create images of you and reputation for you? And I think like that's where it gets to be this kind of beautiful thing of people contributing value to people who can assess and appreciate that value as well, is really the goal of what we try to hopefully do here. It's not to build a universal reputation about who you are to the world. It's about that the reputation to a community where your reputation is strongest, because that is the place where you will thrive and belong, and trying to find those mechanisms so that, using reputation, not as a way to say this is someone's value or worth in the world, but to say this is the community that finds them most valuable. And so that's the one that they should be part of.
Maybe do you want to give a couple examples also with regards to the projects you're working on or projects that you see in the space, be it Jokerace, Guild, or Boysclub in general, like of this interplay between community, identity, and reputation?
Yeah, I think it's a fun, I know we all kind of straddle a lot of different, like whether it's communities, like I think that's one of the coolest parts about watching the development of communities that didn't exist a couple of years ago, watching them kind of merge, watching these collaborations happen, watching like people who have a shared interest, even in just being in, you know, like the crypto space, as we call it, and like watching that expand and develop, and watching communities like, let's use Boysclub, for example, have crossover with others to start using tools that are developed so that everyone doesn't feel like they need to be everything to everyone. So for example, like Boysclub throws incredible parties. As part of that, they need to decide like what cities that they should go to next, what conferences people are going to. So they might use Jokerace in order to produce that data. And then their members might go off and create a bunch of guilds off to the side because Reka and I really want to, you know, host a workout class. And some people aren't into that and others are. And so I think watching like the core teams within what would have otherwise been, you know, like a top down, like this is our programming for the rest of the year, start to take on these new, you know, like sub entities. Actually, Reka and I went to like a totally non-crypto girls only party a couple of days ago, and we were talking to the founders, and we tweeted out like, we're thinking about starting Boysclub EU, and the founders comment like, permissionless innovation, baby, like do it. And things like that are really cool to see, that you don't need you know, to lobby an entire group of people to see a change within an organization itself, but rather watching that community kind of decide like what activities they like to do and who they do it with, and then using the tools that are developed in other communities and for other communities to make their lives easier and to do that, so that it doesn't feel like I have to choose, am I a member of X or Y? It's more so like, how can I pull together the resources that I need to do what I want to do with the people I want to do it with? And so those like cross collaborations are my favorite part of watching the ecosystem develop over the last couple of years.
And to bounce back on what LDF just said, Reka, how easy do you see this bridge between like Web 2 and Web 3? Because, you know, if you go outside, you talk about social graphs, you talk about reputation in general in Web 3, or you show Boysclub and Guild. How do you actually convince people in Web 2, or the example when you were at the party, like how do you talk about all of this? You just say, you know, we love to party, we're super creative. Like, what's your approach to all of this?
For example, what was the easiest sell to this organizer who started this girls club out of loneliness and the inspiration that she just wanted to spend more time with cool women, very similarly to Boysclub, was a very short version of explaining that we work in crypto, and because that's usually not like not necessarily a positive starter. I think in the world when you go out and about, especially in like more, yeah, just not tech friendly circles or like not tech based circles. And then I just told her that we have a very similar concept and group going already, and we create these international parties, get-togethers, mostly for women and cool people. And there's a really big appetite for it, and we should collaborate because we can make even better things happen, and we can onboard or mix these groups of people together. And I think the beauty of this is like going out and about and onboarding more Rep2 folks is that we can, in a non-pushy way, just introduce some of the technology that we already like. So it's not necessarily get yourself a wallet, but through shared experiences, we can introduce the better sides of crypto. So we don't need to have an event where we explain the different types of wallets and all the extra infrastructure things, but we could just go into and have a good time and show why we like working in crypto so much, which is a lot of the innovation and the speed, I think, of the space is actually a pretty big benefit here.
On that note, one of the other things that really resonated specifically with that example and a couple of others we've had, Reka and I are both in Berlin this week, which is why like we're having some of these like in-person moments or engaging with people outside of the crypto bubble a bit. But these organizers themselves, I think the idea of being able to distribute some of the power of decision making to their communities, like all of them feel the pressure of, I wish I could host events. I wish more people could be included in these dinners, like being able to balance maybe having a full-time job and doing this on the side where it is just a fun, like Instagram page that drew a ton of demand to what they were doing. Or like we just went and got our nails done and the girl is just a solo creative who's like, I have too much inbound. I would love to be able to, whether it's teach other people how to do what I do or scale myself. The idea of being able to like have the community that engages with what that one individual creator or organizer does, rather than being the bottleneck to why they can't go on and, produce events in tons of cities around the world is something I think digitally native people, regardless of if they're in crypto or not, are definitely interested in.
David, maybe you want to bounce back on that. And actually, maybe we can link it to an article you wrote, I think last year, which were people are the new platforms. Like, has that view changed, or do you still have that same belief with regards to what Reka and LDF just said?
Okay, also shout out to Jordan for knowing exactly what David wrote a year ago.
I don't
Very
remember.
impressive.
Yeah, what was that about? Can you
Yeah,
summarize?
David's like, remind me.
I need to go to ChatGPT. Yeah, figure out like what is this
Pull you a couple quotes. Not the best quote, although the content is good, but it is a quote from Mark Zuckerberg that says, I would hope that in the future, the organizing principle will be you, your identity, your stuff, your digital goods, your connections, and then you'll be able to pretty seamlessly go between different experiences and different devices on that. And you go on and talk about how like the people are really the real intermediary. Basically, it's all about the people. Let's simplify it as that. It's all about the people, which is kind of where Reka and LDF are going about. If you left the party, whether you're digital native or not, whether you're in crypto, I'm oversimplifying your article, but that's kind of the general idea that was behind it.
Yeah, thank you for summarizing for me. I actually reread it a few days ago because I just put out a piece called the Proto App Thesis, which is in many ways a sequel to people that are the new platforms, and last week. So yeah, the thesis is pretty close, but has probably evolved a bit as I go into a Proto App Thesis, where I really talk about how my belief is that the apps of the future will look like protocols for anybody to be able to build on top of. What unites, I think, these two pieces is kind of like a Roblox vision of the world where everyone can be a builder, and like ultimately you can build any tool, and then anyone can use that tool to build their own tools as well. And so it's like a Lego kit where you're building Legos, if that makes sense. I think a lot of times it's like, devs have been really the core users for almost everything in crypto to date. Like even if you're looking at Blur, right, and the incredible transaction volume, or MEV, it's like it's people who are figuring out how to create bots and how to game the system, etc. And I actually think, there's people get angry about this, like we're only building for ourselves, there's no real world use cases, it's just devs. But I think this is just like a premonition of things to come, like creating this world where anybody can get in and start operating. And right now it's just like there's a lot of friction to doing that because it's not no code, right? Like right now only devs are really the ones who know how to operate these systems and build those things. But like long term, I think we're building a way where everybody in some ways can be a dev without realizing it. Like one thing I'm proud of with Jokerace and what we build is it's a no code smart contract deployment tool. Now we never say that and we never advertise that, but when you create a contest, you're actually setting parameters for a smart contract that you are deploying to whatever chain you're connected to. We're letting you become a dev, basically, right? And so I think like, yeah, like this thesis that anybody can create their own things, especially in the world of ChatGPT, where it's easier than ever for people to just go and create. LDF, I think, is just like one of the best examples of just like a kind of solo creator who just like hacks together new projects every other week and throws them out there. Like that's really something that wasn't even possible 5 or 10 years ago, and crypto really helped enables, I think, as well.
Someone, I think it was Kames actually, who works on District Labs. He deemed these people, I've been calling us like code adjacent, but he called them experience architects. And I love that because it really is more about, I think, shifting from like these end users being, you know, passive consumption to like actually being able to create things. Like to your point, David, only developers have been able to put digital experiences together until there was 1, 2, maybe 3 no code tools that we had to choose from. And it was basically like, if you don't use those, good luck. And so now it is really cool to see the infrastructure get to a place where we really do need to see people being creative and actually setting these parameters and having opinions about what they are trying to accomplish, whether that is an event they're trying to put on, whether that is a podcast that they're trying to coordinate guests for, like whatever these communities are organizing around. We need technology to meet those needs. And so it's really fun to now start to see that play out. And I'm starting to hear it shift from infrastructure providers to recognize that value.
Maybe Reka, before you bounce back on that, there was a recent tweet by like Brian Armstrong from CEO of Coinbase, and he talks about, you know, the 10 ideas that he's the most excited about. We're not going to name them all, but I wanted to kind of ask you guys, like, and David started touching on this, like, what are you excited about in the space? I mean, you can talk first of all with identity and reputation, but you can also go on any other topic. Like, what are you the most looking forward to? And I'll give a couple examples. He mentioned on-chain reputation, on-chain ads, decentralized LinkedIn. So do you have these similar kind of ideas, or you're like, nah, I want something way more creative, I want something? So feel free to share what you're excited about in the space, present or future.
I think for future, that I don't know if anyone's doing right now, maybe, is I think the most similar thing out there right now is Yup. But I feel like it's still such a major issue that we only use Twitter. Decentralized social is growing, but it's, you know, we all know how that using that is, and it really is about your network that's on there, and that takes a while to grow there. So I think alongside of actually both identity and reputation, something that would be super interesting to see is the distribution of content and also the gathering and the summary of content. So getting targeted content better, kind of in a way how TikTok is doing with an algorithm and a lot of other sites are doing with the algorithms, but ideally those would not be closed and strictly only for that platform, but this data could live underneath these applications so that it can be used all over. So whenever I try to use a new decentralized social app that has something better than the previous one, I don't need to build my full interest and network all over again. I can just port, and the algorithm's already trained somewhat, and I can just enjoy the experience and the type of content that lives on that platform and the network as well. But the training would not have to be done. And also along this kind of, since there would be a layer underneath, distribution of the certain content would be much easier ideally. So if it's a text-based or video-based, it could go into different platforms. Right now, it's a major pain point to participate in multiple platforms at the same time meaningfully and distribute your words, your creations, your content there. So I think these kind of relate to each other, and it very much relates to storage, identity, and reputation, and social networks, and all of these at once. And I'd love to see this happen. Privacy is really important here, and ownership of our identity, but that's a different question. But this is the most exciting thing to me. And I think how we might be able to create a new paradigm of apps that are actually more interesting and valuable than the Web 2 ones.
I have to totally agree. And so in an attempt to not repeat what Reka just said, another area that like I'm super excited about is, I think like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of the coordination that this global industry kind of like deals with all the time. We joke that like these events and these conferences are kind of the only thing that has product market fit right now, because regardless of the market conditions, people are flying around the world to get together in person with other people, whether that is, for a conference and programming, or, it's, hey, everyone kind of lives remotely. Like, where should we spend January this year? Because we are all kind of flexible and we want to be around people that we care. Like, we have now developed these very rich communities, even within the crypto space. And so being kind of the first users of these tools to say, no, it's not good enough to just do an NFT drop, but when I'm paying for dinner with my friends or deciding what restaurants to go to with dietary restrictions, like, these are very low lift, or they're not low lift, but like they're low consequence activations that I think we should be using coordination tools around, in the same way that, like, I think a lot of the coordination that still happens is very much soft, and it happens in Telegram groups, and it happens based on like emoji reactions to different messages. And so us getting better at saying these interactions, while small and maybe not like something that would impress a VC about the scale, is actually happening very frequently. And so moving from, that's why I love Jokerace and Guild as like pretty much the two tools that I go to all the time to say, it's not that hard to just add an additional layer of, oh my gosh, like proof that you met someone in person at a conference, or, hey, we're like polling to see again, like who's going to be, what the logo should be for our DAO or whatever. So just taking the extra step to say, let's prove that the value propositions we're promising to everyone else are actually going to be valuable, even if that is just emotional value. Like, entertainment's good enough, like having fun is good enough. It doesn't have to do everything. So yeah, these like smaller interactions between like intimate groups of people, I think wherever we can replace in the stack with the tools that we already have access to, like, let's do that. And then we can connect them all together to make these super apps that we like hope at some point will exist, but we have to start somewhere.
David, do you want to bounce back on that, or you're good?
I agree with everything, and I'm enjoying the conversation. Yeah, I mean, look, yeah, 100% the reason I'm here is to let anybody be able to create communities, and that's it. And I think the way to do that is reputation, mic drop, that's it.
Perfect. And I'll force you to take back the mic, but or maybe not. We can bounce back on one of your very recent quotes.
What do I have to do?
Again.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this should be interesting. You wrote recently, and I don't think you're the only one who thinks this. The bull thesis for crypto is also what's terrifying about it. Money is our new ideology. And of course, we can start this conversation, and others that can join later on that are in the audience. But obviously, you wrote this as a tweet, and there were lots of different opinions. But do you strongly believe that money is really at the core? Or do you think maybe it's something else? It could be like addiction to attention, boredom, that because people are bored, they're looking for new experiences. And so obviously crypto, as Reka said earlier, is very fast. So you're happy to go get your next dose of dopamine. So what is your different take in terms of like, what will drive, I mean, this is a bit of a clickbait question, but what will drive the new bull run slash, is it really money at the center? And I'll give an example. Recently, Friends Tech comes to mind. It's not only money, there's great things about it, but obviously that's a big component. So your turn with the mic, or if LDF Reka, you want to bounce on that.
Yeah, I do think money's at this. I think speculation has been the great use case, and it's also like, we have played status games for a decade with Web2. Web2 is really good at that, and the trade-off that Web2 made was, hey, we'll monetize off of you, you'll get status in return, right? So we take your money, we give you status, and like that's the trade-off. And so people haven't been able to have any real financial power over all these status games that they've been playing. So if you just want to play status games, you just want to play reputation identity games, you can go to Web2 and do that. Like, the unlock for crypto in many ways is attaching money to all of this as well. And that's a blessing and a curse, right? It can go very different ways and go very wrong. But it also is tools for anybody to be able to create their own systems with their own financial rails, which is really exciting. Like, I'm able to build something outside the App Store and outside credit card payments Those are two things that have crushed me in my previous companies, and I no longer have to deal with them. Like, you know, that's huge. And that's because I control the financial rails for like what I'm doing now by working within crypto. So I do think money, you know, is very much at the center as speculation, but I don't think it's the only thing that's there or it's enough. Like the analogy I usually use is poker. Like if you go to a poker table and you look at who's playing poker, like there's people who are there to win money. There's people who are there to win reputation because they want to win the game and like at all costs. And there's people who are just there to socialize. They just want to have fun with their friends and have a nice evening, right? And it's like those are three different types of incentives: social incentives, reputational incentives, and financial incentives. I do think the strongest systems are ones like poker that will be able to combine all of those together. So, you know, to go back, this is not to in any way, you know, denigrate reputation. I think reputation is very much the unlock for the next piece, but it's also the unlock because you can't play good speculative games without reputation. In that case, you're just putting all your power into the hands of airdrop farmers and the richest people. And that's a very boring game to play. And that's why we're in a bear market, is because no one wants to keep playing those games. Nobody wants to keep playing a game in which the rich people just keep winning, right? And so like the only way around that, the only way you can have speculative games in which like rewards are going to actually valuable people within an ecosystem who have contributed meaningfully is reputation. And that's what I'm trying to build. And I think that's what a lot of others are trying to build. But there is no way I see to build really powerful speculative tools without reputation moving forward.
An example of why I agree it's true that money is always at the center of it is if you look around how, coming from a community perspective, working with many communities through Guild, is to see the change of how and why they grow and interact. And 2 years ago, it was absolutely different landscape. It was the DAO season. It was much more meaningful, smaller, more experimentative groups. Right now, if you look around, what really works is absolutely financial speculation. So the projects that still keep growing community-wise are the projects that either are token or suspected to be tokenizing soon, and so thus sharing the value of the company with the users and people who are probably able to claim some of those tokens or receive their airdrop, and things that already contribute some value back, like monetarily. So whenever we're seeing large action and traction for a community or a certain ecosystem, it is because it's financially incentivized. Like at the end of the day, even the larger numbers in crypto right now are only moving for financial incentives. There's always the theoretical core, the people who are building with like big theories in mind. I think all of us here are like that. But the big numbers, the like millions, are only moving because of financial incentives, because they do want a better future for themselves, their family. Crypto does enable that. Speculation is still absolutely a relevant thing to do and participate in. But yeah, it just is what it is, and we shouldn't avoid it. I think we can't. I think should just play along in a way that doesn't harm the ideologies, and like us creating actually more and different types of value and experiences, and not just playing into the farming and speculation. And yeah, so
It's interesting because I don't think that this is I don't think that this is a different take than what you guys are saying, or like it's not directly against it. But I will say that one of the most ironic parts about this next like phase of the ecosystem that I feel like we're all kind of like either ready for or like say that we're enabling, whether it's the creator economy, whether it is like consumer crypto, whether it is you know, like building for end users, or like basically trying to get ready for how would we add additional value, like the value propositions we just covered, to existing communities that are on Web2 platforms right now, right? The people who are using Eventbrite to, you know, like schedule their events, the people who are solely on Instagram to coordinate, the people who storefront is just people messaging them on WhatsApp, like us bringing the already like dense kind of like communities that have value outside of simply finance, they are not finding success in this ecosystem. And it's a ton of additional work for them to be able to put money in the center. As an example, like this isn't a community effort, but I actually did like a kind of research project a couple of months ago. It was like in collaboration with Lens. It was supposed to be like a 10-episode video series called Where's the Money in the Creator Economy? Because again, we've been saying, right, like own your social graph, like only like have one home, but your community can exist everywhere, post once and show up on all these different front ends. The reality is people are not making money doing that, right? Like in crypto, most people have a full-time job that they are working on, which is probably like in some way selling their product, and so they're making like a salary from that. And then outside of that, everything becomes kind of your fun thing that you're doing, right? Boysclub started as just nights and weekends because it was something that they wanted to do. Jokerace started as a game on Twitter that was fun, that everyone wanted to like participate in with their friends. Like these really tangible, we haven't been able to capture that value because we're not necessarily building for those experiences yet, because that requires all of these different tools to work together. You can't have one BD team go out and pitch an end-to-end solution. Like right now, to get a live stream creator off of Twitch onto a Web3 platform, like you can't do it because you're basically saying forfeit distribution to maybe get some collects from this crypto audience. Like we haven't yet cracked how to get someone to set up a wallet to support their favorite creator, even if it isn't monetarily. And so like, I agree that money is the center of it, but it's funny because we're almost using that as a value proposition and not really living up to it for someone who doesn't code and isn't trading. And so like the speculation on top of real value is like what I think is going to come out of the next phase of this market, which is again, this value of I knew them before they were cool and then they blew up and I benefited from that, which basically meant that it was okay not to just like drop something and it mint out immediately, but we're not quite there yet. And so we're in this weird in-between stage where like, yeah, there's a ton of volume on one side of the spectrum and like a lot of interest on the other. And we kind of need to like bridge those two together.
Hard to bounce back on that. I mean, as we're approaching the end, I'll ask maybe just a final question, and then maybe with just a couple minutes if anyone in the audience wants to ask a question. Just do you have any, like, well, first of all, what I wanted to ask is the David, Reka, and LDF in real life the same as Web3 or whatever you want to call it, your persona or your digital self? Are you the same person? You know each other, of course, so you can answer that better. And also, what keeps you going in the space, like building your reputation as you build your reputation identity? Like, what keeps you excited? Kind of, how do you keep your mental state of mind? Just in general, you can go very briefly, like 30 seconds each before we dive into final questions.
We're absolutely not the same online and in person. I think that's impossible. I think no one is. I think everyone I've met who's like bigger on Twitter or is very active on Twitter, they're like, yeah, that's a persona. Like you have to have that going. Otherwise your tweets don't do well. Like you just have to pick up something, a personality and like something you already have in yourself. You just like emphasize it for that reason. So no, we're not the same. And what keeps me going?
Thanks for calling me a psychopath. Oh my God. Yeah.
Of course. You're welcome. Anytime.
You're not a berry.
Actually, thank you. That's the greatest compliment you can give.
He's calculated. He like measures exactly targets who's gonna read this and like psyops everyone. Yeah, that's David.
David, really good at the internet.
It's actually not true. I delete 95% of the tweets because they get no engagement. I just see it as a slot machine. It's like you're just throwing stuff out there and it works 5% of the time. So you just have to keep throwing stuff because you never know what's gonna hit.
You still keep like 5 tweets a day, which is so impressive. Like I don't understand how you do this. It's crazy.
Because they're bad. That's the key. I think you repeat yourself
Quantity,
over and over.
not quality. That's the
quantity, not quality. That's the trick.
Damn. I'm doing something wrong. Gotta learn. So I think for keeping going, I think the same thing that got me started, plus I know so much more. Like the passion for what we talked about initially of having these shared experiences over coming from data. So like things we have in common is so big for me. Like I can't stop thinking about it like every day. I feel like Guild is a really good approach for that. I feel like Jokerace is a very good approach for that. And there's much more other tools that do some of it. I'm not satisfied with the stack as we kind of concluded from this talk, but we are getting there. I feel like with even storing the stuff on chain and deciding how we store and what we store on chain and what we store elsewhere, or yeah, so like even the storage part of it and like how do we go about it is super interesting, and it's something I'm like happily reading about on a Sunday night. Like it's something, yeah, I guess it's passion more than anything.
Hashtag Reka Sunday night.
Yeah. Just reading about storage on chain. Great.
Time off. That's what we're hearing. We're addicted to the internet and we never turn off.
Yeah,
love that.
Reka and LDF are actually exactly the same as they are online because they're only online. They don't exist
We don't
outside.
exist outside.
They're just on a computer and device all day, and there's no other context for themselves other than
Chronically online. That's the new title.
no, like most of the people I love in this space, they're like incredible online, and then even then 1,000 times even better offline. So there is no comparison for getting to actually have like a full emotional conversation with all the resonance that you can have in person. Tweeting not quite so good at that.
The dopamine hits don't fully do it for you. On that note, like at least for me, the thing that keeps me going is like kind of a combination of those two things. Number one, like I love the people that I have met through this ecosystem, and whether it is taking that like shared love of some niche internet something and turning it into, like, hey, again, we should go stay in the same place together. Like I want to go, like, let's go on a walk, or like I'm scheduling my real life around these people now. And then the other end of that is like, I'm not satisfied with the internet the way that it is right now. Like, I don't want to stop because this is not good enough as is. And so, of course, that's like a never ending battle. And I would hope to not just, be done at some point and be like, this is good enough. But the reality is we are online a lot. We do coordinate online a lot. And like, our worlds are very much intertwined between the internet and real life, and crypto and the identity and reputation work that we're doing right now is supposed to make that better, not worse. And so, yeah, it just doesn't feel finished by any means.
Awesome. I guess, these are perfect closing words, but I'll maybe keep let's say 5 minutes, because I also know it's time sensitive and everyone needs to go to dinners and parties, especially Reka and LDF, I think. So maybe if someone in the audience wants to ask, let's say one question for 2-3 people max, we'll give ourselves 5-6 minutes. I don't know if someone has a question or a comment or wants to add anything.
Hey guys, so cool to see you in live. Yeah, I guess for me, the question as a continuity to this whole conversation is like, how do you see the formation of like what I call the last social network, which is like this self-sovereign identity where you cannot be more decentralized than that. You own your like data backpack identity and so on. And then the network is like kind of built between those like, identities. How do you see it playing out? Like, what's the kind of time scale, and what's the motivator for people? Because it feels like sometimes some of us get in trouble with Web2. Like I got kicked out of Twitter after the last ETHCC. Like I just followed 5 people and it said like I was a spammer and I got kicked out. Then I had to write them, and then I was mistakenly again kicked out, and it feels like I'm on thin ice. So this is a use case, but it's really like an edge case that is not for so many of us. So how do you see like the big move towards this like last social network where we are like kind of having our identity, and then the interaction protocols can be whatever, but we keep compounding that thing.
I feel like we won't notice that it's going on, like the progress of transferring. I think we'll just notice we spend more time somewhere else or in a different context. I don't think it's going to be like, yep, we dropped an app and now everybody's like zoop, onboarded. Ideally, some of the data and some of the history and friends and network will be in it or like already there, because it would really be bad and it would suck if like all the posts, all the graph, I think most of the content and the graph are the value of Twitter right now as well. But if all of that would be stuck there and you just move one day from another. So I feel like it will be a gradual process. And I think a lot of the solutions that we explained a little bit more during the call today are needed to make that happen. Time frame wise, we could mess it up. I feel like we could go rogue, and even the things we think are good around identity would prove to not be true later. But if everything goes well and we actually know what we're doing and building right now, assuming everything, most of the things we're building right now are correct and in the right direction, I think it would take like between 3 and 5 years. I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Yeah. Good estimation. We don't know. Sounds good.
Yeah, I totally agree that I don't think it's going to be like a product that gets released tomorrow that becomes, like the singular source of truth. I think in a lot of ways we're seeing, I think again, like Guild and Jokerace are great examples of like very targeted, specific engagements that are shifting over that like add to that, last social graph in a sense. And so I think we need to see more of those experiences people want to participate in being on these rails to contribute to that, rather than hoping that tomorrow we just like completely shift from one to the other. And then one thing I'm like, I wish we did more of is just like self-attested information, or like putting more onus on the individual to be able to pull data from other sources of information. Because like Reka said about Spotify, like I know I got frustrated at the like Spotify Wrapped last year. It's like, I have been producing all of this data. What if I am curious and I have other questions, and that is only curated to me in a specific way that the company decided these 4 metrics were the ones we were going to release? I also think creators are going to be like a big part of driving that change, because they do monetize that information and they don't want to deal with things like, database and storing the information of their communities, like the protection of that, security, privacy. So I do see them as almost like the small businesses of this internet. And I think a lot can come from that.
We have a question in the chat, actually. What's more valuable, every attestation or building a creative reputation? I wonder, could you elaborate on that?
You got me. Hey, everyone. Yeah, I'm thinking like in terms of like all the infinity of data points that you can put out there, like what do you really want to be captured and reflected in your identity and your reputation? Like, is there some kind of like bias towards something that's more about like your value, or let's say like a more curated version? And how could we kind of put more of an emphasis on that from the architecture and design these kind of interfaces? Is it like, do I put equal weight to my mom doing something or endorsing me, or like that I took someone's dog for a walk, or is it like more on the other side? So yeah, just curious how you feel about the curation aspect of that.
I think there's this interesting thing in Twitter where it's like number of followers is, the gauge of like how popular you are. But the people who tend to like you actually want to follow are usually the ones who like really important people follow, not necessarily a lot of people follow, right? So it's like, especially in crypto, it's like the really top devs, like they usually have, less than 5,000 followers, but you look at who's following them and it's like everyone who's deep is following them. It's almost interesting to wonder like, what would it look like to see like a secondary follower count? Like, here's the total number of like my followers if you combined them, like what would that look like? It would be a really simple way of doing it. But yeah, I think it's like knowing who the quality of follower is much more revealing than the quantity of follower, right? Like a bunch of bots follow you, it's not that meaningful. And yeah, it's funny to me that we get this question all the time, which is like, how many users do you have, in a contest? And it's like, well, what you're asking me is how bottable is this? That's only a question of like, how easy do we make it for bots to participate? Because if you want as many users as possible, then the way to do that is to get tons of bots, right? And so it's a very increasingly quantity is just a really useless metric. And I think quality is really important. And then that's going to be curated based on your own social graphs, right? It's like Instagram is able to tell you, hey, look at these other accounts because based on the stuff you follow, this is what other people follow. And it's like Twitter does that a little bit, but that's way more meaningful. Like it's way more meaningful to be like, oh, this is someone who an algorithm predicts I'm going to like, than, oh, this is someone who like universally is beloved, by thousands of people, but that's actually not that many in the world altogether.
And on that note, like similarly to, like the quality versus quantity, there's also the context, right? Like if David is like the greatest skier in the world and like I'm trying to write a paper with him, I'm like, why do you keep bringing that up? Like that's not relevant to what we're trying to do here. So there's also that context of, like quality might mean something in one situation and not another. And so that's where I think just having the baseline like metrics are just not good enough anymore, because what you're putting it into matters even more.
I think on this note, thank you so much, LDF, Reka, and David for this forum today, for really giving all these insights. Also for the audience and for whoever will be watching with regards to identity and reputation. And either way, have a great day / night, party, week, etc. And hope to see you soon. And thank you so much to everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.